Hi everyone, Sean here with Geek Squadron, and today we're going to talk about how Disney can fix the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy. Now this is a little bit of a controversial topic, but we're going to go in with the idea not to trash the movies, but how to fix them and how Star Wars can move forward, particularly in the sequel era. So let's start by going over how we got here. Now, it's kind of common knowledge that the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy was originally given to Disney by George Lucas. He already written a story treatment for the sequel trilogy. Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger opted not to use it and make something completely different, essentially a soft reboot. What they didn't have was a plan going forward, and that's why the sequels are very inconsistent and, let's be honest, they're kind of a mess. The Force Awakens was generally well received. People mostly liked the movie. It had some issues, but generally, people walked away very happy with it and were looking forward to The Last Jedi. In fact, after Force Awakens came out, interest in Star Wars was pretty much at an all-time high. Everybody was coming up with theories about what would happen in Episode 8, and then The Last Jedi came out and subverted everybody's expectations, to use a very popular phrase now. That movie was very divisive, and Star Wars has kind of been on a downward spiral ever since. That's not to say that if you enjoyed The Last Jedi, you don't have that right. Of course you do. You have the right to like any movie you want. But it's very difficult to deny the fact that that movie caused the split that has just gotten out of control ever since that movie came out. The Rise of Skywalker was pretty much the nail in the coffin for any interest in the sequel era. The people that didn't like The Last Jedi didn't like The Rise of Skywalker. The people that did like The Last Jedi didn't like The Rise of Skywalker, so nobody walked away from the sequel trilogy happy. And you can look at the receipts, you can see them on the screen right here. The Force Awakens made about $2 billion at the box office. By the time Rise of Skywalker came out, half the audience pretty much said, I'm out altogether. In fact, they did. You can see that right here. And I would be willing to wager that of the half that did show up, most of that was there out of morbid curiosity to see if they could salvage the sequel trilogy. Well, clearly they didn't. There has been no new content revolving around the sequel trilogy since those movies came out. But we're going to talk about how Disney can save these movies via a special edition treatment. There wouldn't really need to be a whole lot of reshoots. In fact, we could do this with only 10 minutes of newly shot footage. The rest would be some very clever editing to the other movies as they'd exist. We would do this to create a coherent storyline, do it in a way that honors the original characters and passes the baton to the new characters, but creates an interest moving forward in that era. One of the main problems with this sequel trilogy, Disney sequel trilogy, is the original characters were just torn down and killed off. With this edit, this special edition, Disney can salvage the legacy of the original characters, not only salvage the original characters, but it would give the deaths so much more emotional weight because people are satisfied, their legacy lives on, even if they don't. So we're going to talk about how we do that. Now, we also need to talk about where this idea comes from. This person is a very well-regarded Star Wars author. I met him at an author's convention. We talked about his work. We talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi being the most recent thing. We talked about how some editing could have fixed a couple of the commonly discussed issues with that series. And then we talked about the sequels. And he had mentioned they could fix those movies and fix this whole era of Star Wars with the special edition, and we talked about how they would only need 10 minutes of new footage in addition to some very strategic editing, possibly some voiceovers. Not a big deal if some of the actors didn't want to come back. That re-speecher program they have could do the job. They wouldn't really need a lot of this, and we're going to get into that. And that's how we're going to fix it moving forward. So what we're going to do here on Geek Squadron, we're going to go movie by movie in Disney sequel trilogy, and we're going to talk about how they could fix these movies if they chose to. Now, there are three things Disney could do to fix the sequel era. The two are very unlikely. One, completely retcon the sequels as they are and make George Lucas' sequel trilogy. This is unlikely for two reasons. One, Disney has a lot invested in the sequel trilogy that they made. And two, and of course this is sad for anybody that's been a Star Wars fan for any length of time, Carrie Fisher isn't with us anymore. And we want to kind of maintain her final performance as best as we can. Harrison Ford, you probably couldn't twist his arm to come back. He came back for a quick little cameo in Rise of Skywalker, but even that, it looked like he could barely be bothered to roll out of bed, comb his hair, and shave. So that's probably out. Number two, they could retcon the existing sequel trilogy and go with the expanded universe timeline. This is tricky for two reasons. One, they already have a lot of money in other content with their new timeline, and two, it would either have to be animated or they would have to use deepfake technology in addition to that respeecher program. You're talking a lot of money there, so it's not likely for those reasons as well. The third and final option that is a lot more likely, and if they want to salvage this era of Star Wars and be able to tell stories in this timeline moving forward, is to do the special edition treatment to the trilogy as it exists, make it a coherent story, give the legacy characters the send-off that longtime fans wanted to see, while passing the baton to the new characters that the newer fans really like. So the goal here is not to make these movies masterpieces. I don't think that that's even really possible. But what is possible is to edit these movies and do this kind of special edition in a way that makes everybody satisfied with this time period in Star Wars to enjoy anything that comes between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and allows them to enjoy any stories set in and around the sequel era moving forward. So we're going to talk about how we do that. I'm really excited to talk about this after speaking to this author. It really got me excited in a way that I haven't been for Star Wars in a long time, discussing different ideas with fans. So we're going to get into it, and we have our special edition edit of The Force Awakens coming out very soon. We hope you join us here on Geek Squadron to check that out, and we look forward to having a good discussion on Star Wars. We'll talk to you real soon.